Yes, you hear this argument really often, although it's actually an argument that doesn't hold up. The reasoning is simply not there. Okay, let's move on to the point where we try to say that consuming protein doesn't make sense because the proteins will eventually turn into sugar. And if they turn into sugar, then it's pointless because you want to take in as little sugar as possible. Let's talk about that. This argument doesn't exist. Why doesn't this argument exist? Because MotivatedFit recommends consuming 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. This applies to both a low-carb diet and a regular diet, where 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight is also recommended. The only difference is that some people consume a lot of carbohydrates and sugar, while others consume less and more fat. So, the protein requirement is the same in both diets. In one diet, you just consume 500 grams more sugar than in the other. Now, let's think about this. Those who eat 500 grams of sugar say that low-carb diets don't work because you consume the same amount of protein plus 500 grams of sugar. So, this argument is invalid. Let's take an example. Sarah weighs 80 kilograms. According to the MotivatedFit recommendation, she would consume 160 grams of protein per day. Now, we know that when protein is consumed, and we're talking about food-based protein here, not protein shakes, it's widely known that a lot of energy is used up during the digestion process, about 30 to 40% of the calories consumed. So, out of the 160 grams of protein Sarah consumes, 30 to 40% are already used up, leaving her with only 112 grams of protein. Now, Sarah needs to consider how much protein she needs just to maintain her body. For all the repair and rebuilding processes that happen daily, she needs 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight just to maintain her current state. So, she needs 80 grams of protein just to stay the same tomorrow as she is today. If Sarah consumes 160 grams of protein, and 30% is used up, it could be 30 to 40%, but let's stick with 30%, 112 grams remain. Out of that, 80 grams are needed for maintenance processes. That leaves just 32 grams that we can discuss potentially being converted into sugar. But if Sarah is training and building muscle, those 32 grams are needed as well. Now, let's say Sarah isn't training and she has 30 grams left over. How much sugar can be made from 30 grams? The conversion process into sugar also consumes a lot of energy. So, if 5 to 10 grams of sugar are left from those 30 grams, then Sarah has produced 5 grams of sugar in her body. Meanwhile, others who consume 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight and, in addition, eat rice, noodles, and 500 grams of sugar through these sources, end up consuming a lot of sugar. Do you see how illogical this argument is from the beginning? Therefore, the idea that proteins turn into sugar and thus make low-carb diets pointless is simply not true. If someone says that or believes it, they simply have no idea how the body works. We can definitively dismiss this topic. The second point is the lack of strength in training. First of all, if someone lacks strength, it's a good sign because the body is switching from sugar burning to fat burning. That's positive. The transition takes time. People might try low-carb for 4 days and then wonder why their brain and body crave sugar, leaving them feeling weak. Of course, that can happen. However, for those who are adapted to this way of eating, they have the same carbohydrate stores because various mechanisms in the body ensure that it produces and stores sugar while burning fat. Even marathon runners have been shown to have the same carbohydrate stores, but they primarily burn fat during a marathon, only dipping into their sugar reserves for a final sprint. Low-carb or ketogenic diets are especially advantageous in endurance sports because fat is the energy source that lasts the longest. In the past, the common belief was to rely on carbs. Nowadays, we know better, it's better to be keto-adapted. So, you see, these are all transition processes. The body needs to adapt. It's not a black and white situation. Now, let's get to the main point. Many people are concerned that they won't have strength during training on a low-carb diet. Many people actually report that they have more strength after the transition. But there's still this persistent rumor that low-carb diets leave you weak in training. So, we need to think about the goal. What's the goal? Do you want a better body, less fat, and more definition? Why is it so crucial whether you can bench press 10% more weight in the gym? If John used to bench press 100 kilograms, and now he's reduced sugar and can only bench press 85 kilograms, why should that be discouraging? Is it about ego, or is it about achieving a certain look? After all, nobody is going to notice whether John bench presses 85 or 100 kilograms. The goal is health, a well-defined body, and burning fat. It's not about whether John can lift 80, 90, or 100 kilograms. The only people for whom this is relevant are competitive weightlifters, and even then, they represent 0.0001% of the population. For them, I would say, okay, before a competition, you shouldn't wait to become fully keto adapted. Instead, load up on carbohydrates a day or two before the event to get that explosive energy. Even bodybuilders don't necessarily need to be stronger. There are strong bodybuilders, and there are bodybuilders who aren't as strong but still build muscle. The amount of weight you lift isn't what determines your muscle growth. It's about your personal intensity, not your absolute strength. Therefore, for most people, it's irrelevant whether they have 5 to 10% more or less strength. And for those who struggle with weight issues and can't bench press more than 50 or 80 kilograms, it doesn't matter. The focus should be on our principles and health. If you're consuming a lot of carbs just to bench press 10% more, you're also consuming 500 grams of sugar daily. We know that bread, noodles, etc., all turn into sugar in the blood. This results in constant sugar levels, suppressed fat burning, and continuous insulin spikes. The cells start saying, enough, I can't handle this anymore, and they start shutting down. Sugar doesn't get into the cells and is stored as fat instead, leading to overweight and insulin resistance. All this just to bench press 10 kilograms more? That's not logical. We need to think about our goals and whether certain claims make sense. Regarding protein turning into sugar, we can dismiss that topic completely. And when it comes to strength, if you're not a competitive athlete, it's irrelevant. Even for ball sports athletes, would recommend a low-carb diet. But during the adaptation phase, load up on carbs a day before and on the game day. But after the game, go back to low-carb to get used to better carbohydrate storage. So, for competitive athletes, would recommend this approach. But otherwise, prioritize health over everything else. So, you've heard my opinion on these two topics. In my view, neither makes any logical sense. I hope you found this video helpful and that you'll watch it several times to fully internalize these mechanisms. And I'll see you in the next video. Your Elise.